Episode of America in Black and White. Tonight, we deal with community and mental health in this episode. We sit down with the insightful Pastor Devin L. Miller to unravel the threads of the church community engagement and the critical dialogue around mental health. So I want to give you all a few tips or a few things to know about Pastor Miller, please. Pastor Miller is original native of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He's actually he moved to Minnesota before moving to Dallas, and in his educational background, he is a graduate of the University of Minnesota. He has a management degree in marketing, and he also he graduated from the Grace Theological Seminary and Institute. And so, ladies and gentlemen, let me give you all Pastor Miller, who's our guest tonight. Pastor Miller, welcome to the show.
God bless you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy that you're able to take some time out to be with us, and I hope I got everything right in that introduction. Are there any other things that you'd like to share with the audience before we kick off this wonderful show?
No, just know that I'm a person that loves God and loves God's people and strive to do whatever we can do to improve the betterment of our people and people all around.
Well, I definitely thank you because in accordance to where you are in that matter with you and your church, as you and I spoke, it is the goal of the show here, America in Black and White, that we actually delve with giving voice to the voiceless and building our underserved communities as best as possible, connecting one dot at a time.
Right.
And so just for you to even, to come here, I want you to know that it's definitely a blessing. I'd like to know, can you tell us, how did you get into your ministry?
Well, I didn't get into it. God got a hold of me, as the songwriter said. I was called into ministry at the age of 17. But my relationship with God is such that I told him, no, I didn't want to do ministry because the pastors that I knew at that time were old, didn't have no fun, looked like they were just sucking on lemons. I said, no, I don't want that. So I said, I'm about to go to college and I'm going to enjoy college. And if you can catch me over there, then we can talk. And sure enough, about 4 years later, God got a hold of me and slowed me down in the form of surgery. There was found 2 cysts inside my spinal cord. And doctors to this day don't know how they got there. And I had to go and I just withdraw from college. I had to go into surgery. I went in on a Sunday. I went on a Martin Luther King Day, January 18th of, I believe, 1988. And I went in on a Sunday and I woke up on a Tuesday. And when they woke me up, they then told me what the surgery procedure was. Because if they would have told me beforehand, my body would have locked up and prevented the surgery, because they had to drain my spinal cord. They had to put me on a respirator to regulate my breathing, regulate my heart rate, and all of that. And so literally they were in surgery from Sunday till about Monday, intermittently, because like I said, they were inside. And so long story short, they went in, cleared the one at the base of my brain. I have a scar right now to remind me of the goodness of God, where they went in, because the one was at the base of the brain and it was solid. and then the other one was in the middle of my back, and it was a balloon like with this uh, spinal cord fluid slowly seeping through it. So both of those were pressing on my right nerve. Um,
Oh wow.
and so that's how they were even, was because I literally kicked her when they took my reflexes. And it was all because of a herniated disc, which they never took care of, by the way. I still have pain in my back, but I've learned to manage it. But when I came out of that surgery, Charles, I had pastors coming to me asking for advice, asking for help, wanting to just talk to me as a friend. And so at that time, I said, "Okay, God, you got me," and I made it conditional, because that's how we do God. You know, if you want me, then you got to do this. And so I said, "Get me back in school, and allow my senior year to be as easy as my freshman year." And my freshman year, I got a 4.0 because I took general classes, not knowing that I could have been taking my major classes right away. So anyway, but I got back in school a month or a quarter before I was supposed to. And the conversation started with, "We don't usually do this." And I tell usually do this, that's a God thing, because God has moved them from where they used to be to where you need them to be. And so I got back in school, and my senior classes in marketing were just as easy as my freshman classes. And I professed my calling in 1989. I was appointed a youth pastor at my church in 1990. Started a nonprofit soon after that in about 1991. Ran that for about 12 years. Matriculated from the Baptist faith to the Church of God in Christ faith. Was an ordained minister in the Baptist faith. I'm an ordained elder in the Church of God in Christ and pastor. Started Clear Faith Christian Ministries after many attempts. Started Clear Faith in 2010, and it is now a teaching ministry on YouTube, where I've done over 400 videos with Bible study, teaching, and conversation. So that's the
So
history in a nutshell.
okay, so throughout this adversity, and you get to you've surpassed that now. How did this get you into your
Right.
ministry that you founded?
Well, I've always been what you call a community pastor. I've always believed in the bottom up, in working with the people. And as a youth pastor, I was in the schools working with parents and working in the community in St. Paul, Minnesota. Um, Ran for mayor, ran for a school board, because I believe that the power is within the people. And we as ministers of have to do, if we're going to be like Christ, then we got to be like Christ, and we got to be amongst the people. And so I've always had a strong desire and purpose of teaching. And so I taught Sunday school growing up. When I got into preaching, I asked God, I said, "God, I need a hoop," because all the preachers I know used to hoop and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, "God, I need one of them in order to be an effective preacher." And God resoundingly said, "No." He said, I did not create you to preach that way. I created you to teach the word. And so that started my journey of teaching Bible study. We started at Pilgrim Baptist Church. Shout out to historic Pilgrim Baptist Church in St. Paul, Minnesota. That's where I was licensed. That's where I was ordained. And we started a small Bible study teaching on Wednesdays with a book called the Bible in the Light of Our Redemption, which I still teach from today. And we grew that class from 10 members to over 100 members. And it showed me the power of teaching, which coincides with how Christ taught his disciples. He was only teaching 12 people. but the multitudes came because of the words he spoke. And so I really took that to heart. I tried a bricks and mortar building when I founded the church in 2010 by our bishop at Fred Willis Washington, who is the jurisdictional prelate in Minnesota. Did all I was supposed to do to have a building and all that kind of stuff, but I was wanting to reach the millennials. I wanted to reach those who still wanted to party on Saturday night, but still felt they had an obligation to make it to church on Sunday. So we started at 3:00. This was long before 3:00 services became the norm back in 2010, and we just didn't get the numbers. And so I went to my bishop, and I'm the type of person, I'm not tied to a title. I don't need a title to do my work. And I went to my bishop. I said, Bishop, hey, it's not working. 6 months. I tried it, didn't work. I said, I'll turn over my appointment of pastor, and I'll just go back to being an elder. And he was like, no, hold on. Let's look at what you're doing. He said, you're still teaching online, aren't you? And I said, yeah. I had a show called Blog Talk. And I was doing a 30-minute show every Saturday, teaching from this book that I had. And he said, you meet every week, right? I said, yes, sir. He said, just like church. He said, you teach the word? I said, yes. He said, just like church. He said, do people come? I said, yes, sir. At that time, for a month, I had about 1,250 people that were watching our show in the course of a month. He said, you got more members on your radio show than I got in my church. I said, so he said, that's just like church. And he said, do you ask for an offering? I said, yes. He said, just like church. He said, do you get an offering? I said, sometimes. He said, just like church. He said, so we're not going to let you give up your pastor. You are pastoring. You're just doing it in a different way. And it's a way that we hadn't recognized. And so we're going to recognize Clear Faith Christian Ministries as a virtual church. And we went to Facebook, and we're teaching there. And then we landed on YouTube. And we've taught over 400 plus videos of Bible study teaching. And we'll be picking it back up sometime this month. I took last year off to concentrate on our business. And so this year we'll be picking it back up, and we'll be starting with the basics. God bless you, Bishop Parker. God bless you, sir. And Randy Parker is watching. He's a good friend.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, and so as you're watching, please, all of you that are out there watching, if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please subscribe and hit the notifications button.
Yes, sir.
Because every time we do an upload, we want to make sure that as it goes live, it stays there. You'll be able to come back and watch that as much as possible. So as you go through and you get this set up now, tell me, did you guys have a plan or any kind of action, any things that you guys wanted to do, like work specifically in the community, and certain things you guys wanted to work on in the community?
No, not really, Charles. We had a program at the time when I was doing youth pastoring. I had like I said, I ran a nonprofit as well, and the nonprofit was called the Collaborative Movement for Improvement. And we had two programs: Black Teens for Advancement and Sisters in Struggle for Survival. One for Black males and one for Black females. And our mission was to develop African American youth academically, culturally, academically, politically, and socially through a knowledge of history. And so basically I would go into schools and teach relevant history. And we used the backdrop of the civil rights movement, and we taught the history of the civil rights movement in today's time. So we talked about gangs, we talked about drugs, we talked about, the how movies have infiltrated us and changed us and presented us in a certain way. And I'm dealing with high school students. From there, we developed a program called Becoming Everything You Set Out to Be or Best. And that was in the junior highs. So it became the feeder program for our high school chapters. And we, like I said, we did that for roughly 8 to 10 years. Then the last 2 years, we developed the Life Skills Development Center. All of this was in St. Paul, and that was a center where kids could come as an alternative to suspension. And we would work with their social skills, their cultural skills, and help them to really develop and find out why they were messing up in school. We dealt with truancy. We dealt with the schools themselves, making sure that they had the work to do at our center. And we ended up getting kids back in school a day or two ahead of their suspension time. Because our thing was, if you work with the kids will work with you. But if you're in an adversarial role, then it never works. And so that was in the 90s up to the 2000s. Then 9/11 hit, and all the funding for social programs and school programs dried up. And so we had to shut our doors. But I look back now in the 21st century and say we were way ahead of our time in what we were doing with schools and with students, because it's desperately needed now.
So, like, well, what about right now today? Are you guys doing any You got a program that's running right now, right? Or do you?
Well, I have a business. I have a business called entitled Clear Faith Christian Counseling, Consulting, and Coaching Services.
Okay.
And so, 2014, when I got here to Texas, and we do relationships counseling, and so I work with couples across the country, helping them to stand in their truth, speak with their voice, learn to listen, to understand, not always to respond, and to be their best authentic self. So I kind of, as I matured our programs, and left the young stuff to the young folks, but still got the concept, because I think, like I said, I think it's so needed to go back into the schools, working with our students, not from just a behavioral perspective, but a cultural perspective, because we've always been about education. We've always been about knowing that we had to be twice as good, but somewhere we lost that. And now we expect the schools to do everything. The church does nothing. And then there's some people that are caught in the middle. And so I've always been an advocate for churches to work together for community building, to really become transformational centers and not just religious places, which are turning into social clubs. And we're losing sight of what we're supposed to be doing in the community.
So can you share insights into your community impact and the projects you've been involved in?
Well, again, when I was in Minnesota, I did a whole lot. When I came to Texas, I was like the Twilight Zone. But anyway, most of the work I did was in Minnesota, and most of our programs were in the St. Paul public school system. We advocate that churches and systems should work together. It should not be separate entities. When I was doing youth work, I would visit my students in their schools. You know, you got youth pastors today that are looking at youth pastoring as a segue into preaching and being a pastor. No, it's not a succession. You got to have a heart for kids. You got to have a heart for them being well, being mentally, emotionally, and physically and socially well. And so I would show up, and they'd be like, and this was back when you could go into schools and there wasn't no metal detectors and all this kind of stuff. But I'd go in, I knew the teachers, I knew the principals, I knew all my students, and they knew me. And it wasn't a draw to the church, it was me drawing to them. So I got to know their parents. And it was really a community. You know, St. Paul, Minnesota is the capital of Minnesota. Minnesota, but it's a small town. And so the Black community was even smaller because Minnesota only has about 10 to 12% that are African American. But if you look at it back when I was there, the per capita of college graduates in that community was about 80%. So we were an intelligent people, which meant we were a community people. And so it was very easy to go into the schools and, work with the police department and work with the government because we were all essentially a family. And it didn't matter what color you were. It was really about the work, which is something else that we've gotten away from. I tell people all the time, I'm going to be black wherever I go. And so I don't need to be ashamed of that, especially since we're in, I always call this the Negro Full Employment Month. For those of us who speak, is the month of February. We get the most jobs in February during Black History Month because they want to hear it from a black person. But my whole thing was, of course, for us, and we know we live our history 365. Exactly. There's not a day that we're not making history somewhere. Somewhere, somebody's making history. And so when we walk around with that sense of pride, then there's nothing that nobody can tell us as long as they're respectful. And so the work we did in community, we had programs called the Just Stop It campaign, where we were on the street in the community, talking with gang members, talking with going to those streets where they were selling drugs. I had a bullhorn, Charles. I hit the siren on the bull. For the next hour, the drugstore is closed. And we see cars driving by and they slow down and we look at them as much as they look at us, and we knew that these cars didn't belong in our neighborhood. We knew these cars were coming from someplace else. And so we would tell them, if you want to get some drugs, go to your community. Don't come to our community and get drugs. We got a big enough problem people around, Charles. Our graduation rate when our program was in place was 70%. 70, and that same 70% went to college. Okay, I had no young ladies in our program that got pregnant prematurely because we taught them. And back in the day, the church was the social center. That's where you learned your manners, you learned your etiquette, you learned how to get along with people. Now we go there for entertainment and a song, and it's sad because it's killing us. It ain't killing nobody else. It's killing us. And we got to get back to that. And so, the programs that we did was for a time where people were open to those type of programs. We're not open anymore. We want government to do everything. We want county government to do everything, city government to do anything. And I'm like, the Bible says we're a peculiar people. The Bible says that we're a royal priesthood. The Bible says that we are not citizens of this world. Keep wanting to get citizenship in a place that we don't have, and yet not do the work that needs to be done. And so, programs and projects, they come and go, man, but the passion has to be there to really want to work with your people. And that's what drives me to do what I do.
So what role does your church play in community engagement, and how does it contribute to social issues, societal issues?
Well, I would really say that our business really helps people at the grassroots because everything is built on relationships. It's a relationship with your family, relationship with your job. And so in the 8 years that we've been doing Clear Faith Christian Counseling, we come across people from all walks of life. I think the work that we do is the evangelistic ministry of yesterday, because the internet is what we have. Everybody's on the internet. You're on the internet. You're reaching people. And so I would say that the internet is the last frontier. Before the second coming of Christ, we have got to figure out how to utilize this for kingdom building. And so our virtual business literally has touched people across the country, all from my desk right here in Texas. We've gone from the United Kingdom all the way to Alaska in working with families and working with couples, engaged couples, boyfriend, girlfriend. And that's where the work is, because a lot of these people are unchurched, or if they are church, they don't have counseling in the churches. And so we have literally become their virtual pastor. We move them after we get done with working with their issues. We encourage them to go to our YouTube channel, watch our videos, do a Bible study, get to know God, who He is. And so that's how we're impacting communities, one couple at a time.
Wow. So can you tell me how does your organization conducts discussions on both community and mental health simultaneously?
Sure. One, you have to understand that people are involved in community. They are a part of a community, number one. And mental health is not just, we have to read. I won't say we. Mental health has to be redefined. Mental health doesn't mean you're crazy. Mental health means that you have challenges in dealing with the day-to-day issues of life. That and that's where counseling comes in. The Bible says, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly. See, we always want to make it individual. No, but your job might be the counsel. So you got to know how to navigate life. And that's really what the teachings of the word does, is help you navigate life. And so when we look at mental health, when we look at depression, when we look at anxiety, when we look at high blood pressure, when we look at all of these things that affect our community, it starts spiritual and then moves to the physical. If your spirit is not right, your mind ain't going to be right. The Bible says, let this mind be in you, that being the mind of Christ. Well, if you don't know who Christ is, then you have a mind that is either a reprobate mind or a double mind. So the Bible teaches us how to deal with people that are confused. It doesn't tell us to push them aside. It doesn't say to cast them away. It says to get to the core. And what we try to do in working with people is get to the core of the issue. What is really going on, not with your husband or your wife, not with your kids or your significant other, but what's going on with you? Because it's not about pointing the finger. Well, Charles did this, and every time I talk to Charles, okay, but how are you talking to Charles? Are you coming at him or are you coming to him? He make me crazy. What, did you start out crazy? Did you come from a home that was chaotic? And so all you know is chaos.
Right.
And get a hold of a person, be it male or female, that wants to calm down and take things one step at a time, and you don't know how to act because you've never been in that environment.
Yes, sir.
But we look at that and say, oh, they crazy. No, you got to check their environment, because it's quiet as kept. If you black and living in America, we crazy. We dealing with stuff. Okay. We all had put on the mask. We go to work, we got to put on the mask of what the other person wants us to be. We go to our churches and we put on the mask because we don't want to be vulnerable to the work and the will and the way of God. We go in our homes, we put on the mask because we don't want to be vulnerable to our husbands or our wives, because the last time I was vulnerable, I got hurt and I said I wasn't going to let this happen again. That's mental illness in its spiritual sense. And until we get to that core, Charles, we're always going to have problems, and it's going to pass to generation.
Pastor, I want you to help us, as you were just on that last topic you was just talking about and how you was discussing that. Give our audience a sense as to what are some of the things that they need to do, or some of the things they can do in order to make that a little bit easier, a little bit better on themselves.
Call me and let me counsel them. That's easy. Let me make some money. No, I'm just like, that's a short show, Charles. That's a short show. But what we really need to do is, and what we do in our business, like I said, we got to get to the core. Okay. And the core is how you grew up.
Right.
I tell people all the time, Charles, everything we learn in the formative years of our lives.
Yep.
From 0 to about the age of 6.
Right.
We're pretty much set. And I add to that everything we need to know, we learn in kindergarten.
Okay.
You learn your letters, you learn your numbers, you learn how to socialize, don't hit Billy, we don't hit people. You learn all that in kindergarten.
Right.
And then it just builds from there. Well, spiritually, we learned everything from the Garden of Eden. And we don't understand how God works in such a way that helps us in our daily walk. And so when I work with people, the first thing I do, them talk. See, typically in counseling, counselors come from, I'm the expert, I'm the educated one, I know what's wrong with you. And I'm like, no, you don't. We have no clue until we let the people talk. And we can't let them talk from a griping perspective, arguing, pointing fingers and all that. That does not happen when we counsel people, either online or in our house. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, tell me about your relationship. Tell me how you met. Tell me what shifted to get us here. I got to take you backwards to bring you to where you are, because everything has an origin. Okay? Example. My son now, 27 years old, plays drums. He's a prolific drummer. Went to college to learn music. He does well. He started at 2 years old beating on the pots and pans in the house. Now, I looked at that and I said, you know what? I can do one or two things. I can either take the pots away and tell him to go play with something else, or I can see what's going on. And after a while, he was just, music was on and he was playing according to the music. I said, okay. So then I got him a little drum and some sticks and he was just drumming away. I got him a drum set. He was drumming away. He went to high school and got into the band. He was playing all types of instruments. He went to college and he studied music. Now he's in 2 bands. My question is, what if I would have stopped him at 2 years old?
Oh, wow. That means you would have limited his progress.
That's it. And that's what we do. We don't listen to people. We try to tell people who they are, tell people what they're going to do, and we crunch the creativity that they may have had. Case in point, you see the pictures behind me of Malcolm and Martin. Yes. We know the story of Malcolm. Malcolm, when he was in middle school, wanted to be a lawyer. But the white teacher told him, no, you can't be a lawyer. Do something with your hands. So what did he become? A thief.
Yes.
And it wasn't until he got with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that he changed and became who he was. But we stifle dreams, Charles. Mm-hmm. We stifle creativity. We are a creative people.
Right.
And we are created from a creator. So that means if we're created from a creator and he said, let me breath of life and man be living soul, what do you think we're supposed to do? Create. But what happened?
Create.
We were doing it in segregation. We were doing it when we didn't have nothing to compare to. But the minute integration came in, what did they destroy? They destroyed our creativity and told us to be like them. And look where we are now.
Exactly. I agree 100%.
Right. Exactly. So we have to go to the origin of where we lost it and understand that me being segregated for somebody that looks like this does not mean I don't like you. It don't mean I want to kill you. It don't mean it. See, white America's fear is that we will do to them what they did to us.
Number one.
And as soon as white America gets over that,
right,
we'll be in a much better place.
Oh, most definitely. I agree with you 500% because, like I say, that's what this show is about. And, and what this platform is to do is to actually build communities and to get knowledge from an informative perspective that people can know that there are several things that you can and you are able to do. Just being able to find that right resource to get there, to do it, and just go for it and be proud of yourself.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, tell us about the Voices from the Pews and how it amplifies community voices.
Well, first of all, we have stifled the voices from the pews
Okay.
because we have a top down mentality in our churches, which
Okay.
which perpetuates itself into a one leader system in our communities, and that's by design. If you really see, we don't develop. We're not taught. Let me say it this way: to develop leaders, we're taught to develop a leader, and that is not what works in our community because we know that everyone can bring something for the whole. And in communities where there is leadership, and what I call that is a ship full of leaders, and that's where you see progress. Same within the church. When you see leadership, not one pastor, not one bishop, but you see a leadership, then that's where you see progress in the church, which permeates itself into progress in the community. And I've always said, so goes the church, so goes the community. Because in our community is founded on faith.
Mm-hmm.
Our community is built on knowing, stepping out on nothing and knowing that something is there.
Mm-hmm.
But we've lost that because now we're money. We're dependent on the plate. We're not dependent on the creativity of the people. Example. Many church, when I was at Pilgrim Baptist Church had the most per capita of teachers in the state that attended the church. Do you know what we did? We started an after-school program.
Oh, wow.
We had teachers. We had retired teachers.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people all the time when I was working with kids, I had a project where they would go. I told them to go to nursing homes and interview people in the nursing homes. I said because nursing homes are dormant universities. You have the most people with the most knowledge sitting up there dying because no one is asking them how they made it this far.
Wow. So
what's your secret? Because you're 90 years old. You lived a life, but never asked, how did you do it? The blueprints are in our nursing homes. The blueprints are in our assisted living centers. And instead of putting them away, we should embrace them and find out how they made it. Because gone are the days of the big mama in our community. Big mama's 40 years old, Charles.
Now she is.
Yes. we look, I'm 58 years old. I don't know how old you are, Charles, but our age group is totally disconnected from the next generation.
Well, I think to some extent you're right about that because I'm 57. And I can say that basically the communication to that next the generation that's here now, it's a little bit off. And I think it's a little bit off because it's like for some strange reason, our kids have gotten to this entitlement thing. And that's never been when I was coming up because I wasn't entitled to anything. If I didn't earn it, I didn't get it.
Right.
And so like now they're just entitled. And so I think that's our kids mixing with kids that don't look like us that's got that entitlement. And they say, well, they can do it, then I should be able to do it too.
Yes. Yes.
And that's a false sense of false sense of being.
Yeah, yeah. I was a part of the busing program in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Okay.
When busing was started, where they take black kids and brown kids and take them to the suburbs, and somehow the bus that was supposed to come from the suburbs to the city never made it. It's like I don't know if it got on the wrong road or, they just got lost, but you never saw them coming from the suburbs, you know, and they wouldn't send out any search teams to find the buses. So I think they just gave up.
Right.
But because we didn't have no recourse, but parents, it was a conscious decision because they saw the deterioration of the public schools in the city. And they said, here's an opportunity to you go to a better school. It didn't mean you were better. It just means your education will be better. Mm-hmm. And so I was bused to a little village in the suburb. It was called the village of Shorewood. Okay. Mm-hmm. That was where all the mostly affluent people lived. The Jewish people lived. Everybody that had some money lived in Shorewood, between Shorewood and Whitefish Bay. Hence the name, Whitefish Bay. Catch that when you get home. But anyway, I go to this school, and I'm the only black male, along with I'm one of two, excuse me, and then there were 8 females that went to the middle school or the intermediate school, which this school was on a campus, Charles, of buildings like you would go to a small camp, a small college. It had the intermediate school was on one side. It had tennis courts. It had a practice field for the football team. It had the big field for the football team. It had a soccer field. It had a arena for the basketball team and gymnastics and wrestling. It had a performing arts building, and it had an administration building and educational, and it had a science building, Charles. Look here, brother. When I went to that school, I was how it's supposed to be. But I knew I had a responsibility because I came from an all-black elementary school. So I didn't have to go to school to find out who I was. I knew who I was, and I knew the purpose for which I went. Coming out of 8th grade, going over to the high school, I graduated as, we took the Myers-Briggs test on what your career would be. My career will be a minister or a lawyer. Minister or lawyer. Okay. I said, oh, okay. So hindsight being 2020. But I get to the high school, and this was 1979. I get to the high school, there was a black table and a white table. All the black students sat at the black table, and all the white students, when they would come in this class, come into the building, sat at the white table. Now, Charles, I had friends on both sides of the aisle. Right. Okay. So when I would come to school, into the high school in 9th grade, my daddy told me, I didn't send you to school to make friends. I sent you to school to get an education. Yep. Okay. And I'd go right down the middle. I'd say hello to my white friends. I'd say hello to the black friends. And I kept going. The number of black students at the high school was about 15 to 20 in 4 grades. We had my class was 300 when I graduated. And we had maybe 8 to 10 black students in my class. Okay, class of 83. So we all played sports, and we were in the football season, and they cornered me on the football field one day. It was a Friday. I'm going to tell you exactly what day it was. It was a Friday. And they came up to me, and I'm walking one way, and I see this group of brothers coming my way. And I'm like, okay, hey, what's going on? I'll keep going. They shifted and stopped me, Charles. And they said, who do you think you are? I said, excuse me? And they said, How come you don't come and sit at the black table? I said, I didn't think sitting at the black table was a prerequisite for me graduating. And of course, you get smart with some of the brothers. They're like, yo, you that N word. But I was like, ain't nobody gave me no manual, You just sit at the black table in order to be. So they said to me, Charles, look here, little, you better have your at the black table on Monday, or we're gonna whoop your every day until you get there.
Oh.
Now, Charles, there comes a time in life when you got to contemplate your life. Okay? And I didn't want to tell my dad because my dad was, he was kind of militant, and he come up there and change the school if I told him what was happening to his son.
Right.
So Monday morning, I get up early, catch the bus, get there, and I sit at the table. No problems. Everybody talking, laughing, doing what they do. I pulled one of the sisters aside and I said, hey, what's so big about this table? And she's like, what happened? I said, so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. They came up to me on Friday and da-da-da-da. And she said, Devin, first of all, understand this. We know who you are. We heard about what you did, and you were the president of your class at the middle school. First time in the history of Strowood they had a black president of the class. We knew that. But we had to watch you. And we did that. They did that because if anything ever breaks out in this school, you better know us as much as we know you.
Keeping you protected.
Exactly. And that was my community building history lesson 101.
Ooh, okay. Now that I like that. I like that.
See, when we embrace ourselves, then we know how to work with us.
Exactly.
Now, let me take you further. I was a junior in high school. I was elected class president. First time in the history of Shorewood that they've ever had a black male as junior class president. Senior year, I was like, I don't want this anymore. I did my thing. Let somebody else run. I had a white guy, my friend, consider my friend, Phil Hudson. Never forget this. He said, Devin, are you running for senior class president? I said, nah, man, I'm done. I got almost all my grades. I'm thinking about getting out early. Told me, well, I'll tell you. But anyway, I said, no, I'm not going to run. I'm good. They're like, no, Devin, you got to run. I'm like, what do you mean I got to run? I ain't got to do the only two things I got to do is stay black and die. Those are the only two things I got to do. And so he's like, no, Devin, we need you to run because the person who's running, we don't want them to be the president. And it was a white guy. Right. And I said, okay, well, I tell you what, I'm not doing any campaigning. If you want me to run, you make it happen. Phil's like, bet. Made buttons, made poster signs, rallied the people, all of that. I'm just laying in the cut, Charles. I'm just like, okay. We get to the nominating session, and there was Steve Klain, white boy, Steve Fisher, who was the smart white boy. He was the one he was so smart they made the grading curve on what he got. That's how smart that boy was. And then we had John Schneiderman, which was a Jewish boy. And we're all friends. We're in the student council meeting, and they're taking nominations for senior class president. John Schneiderman had come up to me earlier that, like in the week or whatever, said, Devin, are you running? I said, no, man, I'm not running. Now, Phil's still doing what he's doing. I said, but I'm not running. So when we get to the meeting and they make nominations, John puts his name up. Steve puts his name up. Steve puts his name up. Phil Hudson stands up and says, I'd like to nominate Devin Miller for senior class president. And the whole room erupted.
Oh, wow.
John Schneiderman looked at me and said, Devin, you said you're not running. I said, I'm not running. The people have spoken, man. I'm only doing what the people want. And so he said, SHIT, wrote real loud, just yelled it out. I was laughing. I was just having a good time, Charles. I was enjoying my senior class year. So we get to making the announcement, the speeches. We have to give speeches. And all the three of them went before me because I'm the incumbent. So I said it last. So I get up there and I said, hey, my name's Devin Miller. You know who I am. You know what I've done. If we did last year to happen this year, you know what to do. The whole auditorium, 300 plus students just on their feet, I felt like, now I look back, I felt like Obama. It was like, oh my God, So I win the election, hands down. Now I'm a two-term African-American male in the history of Shorewood. Ain't nobody done it since then. And so I'm like, okay, everything is good. We all, we singing Kumbaya, everything is good. Exam week, senior year. Eric Dresselhaus, 280-something pound corn-eating white boy, okay? We played football together. We played basketball together. We went through junior high and all through high school together. I considered Eric my friend, okay? I go to his house to study for our finals, one of our finals. He and I had the same class. Eric lived in a mansion, okay? First time I ever been in a mansion in my life. I've been in a few since then, but that was the first time that I was in a mansion. So I'm like a tourist, looking around. I'm like, man, this is how rich folks live, And so we're studying, and I'm getting ready to leave, and Eric tries to put his hands on my head. Okay. Now I'm 5'10". I'm 5'10" on a good day. Okay. If I stand straight up, I'll be about 5'10" and a half. Okay. Eric's 6'3", 6'4". So it's like this hand is coming towards my head, and I stop it. And I said, Eric, what are you doing? In a very calm voice. He said, oh, I was going to rub your head for good luck.
Oh.
I said, Eric, you touch my head, I'm going to kill you in your house. And he looked at me, and I'm still holding his hand. He said, you get that nervous laugh. I ain't broke a smile, Charles. I ain't broke a smile. I said, now, Eric, I'm going to let your hand go, and I'm going to walk out your house, and I'll see you tomorrow. And I walked out backwards until I opened the door and left. 5 years later, Charles, we're at our class reunion, and I've been in college for a few years. I think I graduated by that time. And Eric, I'm in a group of people, and Eric comes to the group, and he's like, hey, Devin. I'm like, hey, Eric, how you doing, man? Good to see you. What's going on? How's your family? Blah, blah, blah. He says, Devin, do you remember? Now, this is 5 years later. He says, Devin, do you remember when we were studying at my house? I said, oh, yeah, I remember. I said, in fact, I use it as an example when I teach other African-American kids. He said, do you remember what you said? We were at my house. I said, oh, yes, I remember quite vividly. I said, and in fact, if you try it again, the same thing I said then, it's going to be the same thing I say right now. Only I'm a little older. And he said, Devin, I want to thank you. I said, for what? He said, you taught me on that moment what not to do. He said, because my dad taught me that when you see a black man, you should rub his head for good luck.
Oh, hey.
And I said, okay. He said, but after that moment, I went to college, I studied African American history, and I saw all the problems that we, white people, had done to you as a people. He said, and you opened my eyes. That moment in my life opened my eyes. I said, Eric, understand this. Everybody that looks like me is not a teacher. I know my call in life is to teach people. I said, because I could have been, I said, if you ever went up to anybody else, they wouldn't have taken the time to teach you. They would have took the time to do exactly what I said. I said, so I'm glad you learned in the time you did. He said, Devin, you don't even know how that changed my life. And I take that to say this, Charles, we got to stop being mad at white folks and understand that they hurting just as much as we are.
Okay.
Now, it doesn't mean that it's up to us to heal them, but when we get the opportunity, we should. And as Malcolm said, you can support us, but you can't help us. And so we have got to change our mindset, because what's happening now, and when you look at America in black and white, it ain't white folks doing stuff to us. It's us doing stuff to us.
Right.
It's us not spending the money with our people. It's us not building institutions. It's us not putting our money together to buy strip malls and put our people in there who have a craft or have a business. It's us that's not supporting us. And we got to stop waiting for what we already have, and that's spirit.
Now, see, that right there, what you just spoke was nothing but the truth, the whole truth.
Yes,
so tell me this: what are your personal insights on mental health, and how do you address it within the community?
Well, I think, like I said, the way we address mental health is to go to the core of why people are the way they are. We got to have conversation, because everybody ain't crazy. Now, there are some, and we've always had crazy people in our community, Charles. You know that. We had Willie the wino that was on the street. He was an alcoholic, but we didn't call him an alcoholic.
No.
We just said Willie got a problem. But everybody in the community gave Willie a sandwich if he needed it, gave him a place to stay. You know, we had some folks that was walking in the neighborhood talking to themselves. We just said, well, they just a little touched. You know, but that was schizophrenia. We didn't have words for it, but we had heart for it.
Yes.
We love the people. Now we want our kids, you know, they little hyper. They're doing too much in the classroom. Instead of saying, okay, that means his mind is moving faster than his mouth. Stimulate his mind more and he'll slow down. No, we call it ADHD, ADD, and we want to give him Ritalin, and we want to give him all these drugs. We don't need drugs.
Yeah.
We need us.
Exactly.
We need love. You can't put all black kids in a classroom with a white teacher. I'm sorry. It don't work.
It don't.
If you blend it up a little bit, that might work, but most of our cities and communities are segregated. No matter how much we want to say they're not, they are. But yet we want to still put white teachers in urban communities. And why? Because we're not doing it because we don't want to do it. We want more money. And I get that. But at some point, we've got to appreciate the teachers that we have that are African American and support them. And we can broaden that to black and brown. And again, this is where the church comes in. I told churches back in the day, we should collectively as churches have a fund that we put money into to supplement teachers' salaries. What would that look like, Charles? If they're active, if they're doing well, their classrooms are doing well. I'm not saying just give them money, but if you're performing, The community should give you an incentive. The community should put
Yes.
$5,000 into your pocket because you're helping our
Yeah.
babies. Because the government's not going to do it. The government already got it planned for whatever kindergarten year is in right now. They're making that many beds for prison.
Yep.
And they're going to make sure those prisons are full. And now that they're privatizing prisons, they're going to make sure even more. And we sit on the sideline saying, well, if I get on the school board, then I'm going to make a difference. No, you're not. I tried that. Okay, I'm not saying I'm the be all end all, but I'd say, okay, let me do it the right way. Let me run for school board. And it was like, it was politicized. I mean, it was politicized. Are you Republican or are you Democrat? I'm for kids. I'm not for party. And I'm running, and I said, do you know we spend more money on administration than we do on the success rate of our kids? How can you have 17 administrators and you only got 16 schools? What's that other administrator doing? Oh, I'm administrator on leave. Leave for what? Get your butt back in the classroom and teach.
Yeah.
And we have astronomical salaries for people doing nothing. Man, when I was running, they gave the superintendent, when I was running for, they gave the superintendent a $40,000 moving allowance. Do you know where she was? Yeah, moving allowance, $40,000. Do you know where she was moving from? She was moving from the suburb to the city because we had a mandate that any public service had to live in the city limits. So she lived 15 minutes outside the city limits and bought a house just close to the school, in the district, and it cost $40,000. I said, do you know what I could have done with that $40,000 in my program?
Okay.
I said, and do you know that you could have made it a great PR stunt if you would have got the football team of our historic school to go and help the new superintendent and get the truck and have the kid helping the superintendent move? I said, you know what PR that would look like? And you save yourself $40,000 that you could have put into an incentive program for the teachers that were producing the best students in their classroom. You would have thought I was a socialist running for school board, Charles. Oh no, that's too radical. Oh, that's too. How is that too radical? But this is the mentality that we have now.
Well, when it makes sense.
Exactly.
When it makes sense, I don't want to do it.
No. They're like, that's too simple. I said, isn't that what it's supposed to be? Aren't we supposed to be in the position to make it better than the previous generation? Isn't that what we're supposed to do? I said, we have the knowledge in our community. We don't take the time to sit down and figure it out. We've got educators, we've got lawyers, we've got doctors, we've got dentists, we've got all of that. Where are they? In our churches. If a pastor were ever to take an inventory of the wealth, the knowledge wealth that he has in his church or her church, and take that and use that to change community by going into the community. See, pastors don't need to be sitting in their offices waiting for something to come. Get out your office and go to the community.
Yep.
Go walk around the neighborhood. Do you show up for school board meetings?
Exactly.
Do you show up for community meetings in your neighborhood? Are you on the crime watch program? Or do you have a gate around your building to make sure nobody can get in? And there's a few people in St. Paul that know who I'm talking about. And I ain't going to name no names, but I got a couple of people on the chat that are from St. Paul, and they know who I'm talking about. We create our churches to become gated communities.
Right.
We got gates. Nobody can come in. Pastors only got certain hours. Pastors don't give out their number because they don't want to be contacted.
So
That's
I got one last final question for you.
yes, sir.
And that is, tell me, how do you balance addressing serious topics like race, mental health, and maintaining and engaging an accessible community or accessibility to yourself and your organization? Do you want me to read that again?
Man, I put myself out there. Yeah, I know. I got you. I put my stuff out there. I can't change my cell number, Charles. Too many people have it. Too many people have it.
Oh, well, see, that's
my email address is public. Okay. Mm-hmm. My business is whenever I get a chance to let people know about my business, I let them know, because it's not about my business and making money. It's about building people. When I was in churches and working in churches, I always worked with the power source, because I always wanted to make sure that we were doing what we were supposed to do. I was a chief adjutant in the Church of God in Christ. I was a chief adjutant to the bishop. And so everywhere the bishop went, I would go. And we were so close that when I would go to church, they would think that the bishop was following me. And I'm like, no, I just came to see how you doing. The bishop ain't with me today. But we were that close. And so I knew I had a responsibility not only to represent myself, but to represent him. And that's what we need in our communities. If the pastor can, I had a pastor tell me one day, I went to him, I said, hey man, you got the biggest church in our community. I need you out here. I need you out here with me. I'm protesting. I'm doing this and doing that. He said, Devin, that's not my call. I'm not called to that. He said, what I'm called to is to be the pastor to the people of this church, and to be available when they need me to be available, to go when they call me to go. He said, but Devin, here's what I'll do for you. If you need our building for meetings, if you need some of my members for protection or whatever, because they had some deacons that were, on point. He said, Devin, our people are at your disposal. You just let me know what you need. Our buildings are at your disposal. No, be a part of the community. I just can't be out there. That's the conversations we need to have. Who's going to be the foot soldiers? Who's going to be the ones that's going to be the administration? Who's going to be the ones that's going to talk to the powers that be? When you have that type of community working, there's nothing that can't happen. There's no reason why there's a drug den down the street from a church. That doesn't make sense to me. They're selling drugs on the far corner, and there's a church on every other corner. How is that happening?
Wow.
It's happening because we have become afraid of our own people. Now, I'm not saying be stupid, because that's being mental. Okay, don't go in there. Don't go in there and think that Gabriel and Michael gonna be with you when you go into the den. Don't do that. Okay. Because whenever I went out into the community, I had some crazy folks with me. Okay.
Right.
I had to confront a young man. I couldn't confront him because of my position in the community, but I knew a whole bunch of others that wouldn't mind at all. And so we went together as a group and went and talked to that young man. I told him, I said, look, I can't put hands on you. I said, but these guys won't have a problem doing it. So I need you to get straight. He's like, all right, Rev, all right. And I had one that was there. He's like, Rev, I already came out the pen. I don't mind going back. I'll do it right now. I said, no, I don't need that. We good, But we got people in the community that love the community enough that they want to protect it. We need to reach. We got gangs in every community. Why can't they police our community if we teach them right? When I was doing my program, I went to the gangs, man. I had the gangs meeting in my church. The top 4 leaders of the Gangster Disciples, the Crips, the Bloods, the Peace Stone Rangers, all the top leaders were in my church.
Wow.
And I'm talking the national leaders. I'm not talking about the local leaders, because the local people were making a mess of the name that the big boys had made. And they came into Minneapolis and said, Rev, we hearing what's going on. If these boys don't straighten up, we're not coming to town next time and asking permission. We're going to take care of business. I said, don't do it. Let me get to them. Let me talk with them and see what's going on. That's the power of the church. It wasn't Devin Miller. It was the church. They respected the church. Mm-hmm. I had people come up to me and say, don't touch him. He's a minister. I ain't walking around with a I'm a minister sign on my head. They just said, no, don't mess with him.
Right.
I mean, I can go on and on, but when you have a passion for this and you know you're called to this, there ain't nothing that can stop you. And we have to replicate this, because there are many passionate people in various sectors of our community. We just have to tap into the passion. And not, I need permission. You don't need permission for your own people. I tell people all the time, if you're gonna call a community meeting, please make sure there ain't no white people there.
Ooh.
Well, you know,
you better go. Said everything. Said that.
Becky and Bill, you know, they've been good friends of ours for a long time. I said, Becky and Bill been your friends for a reason.
Exactly.
I said, and they don't need to be in the house when we try and deal with house business.
Exactly.
Man, I was a part of the Million Man March in 1995, Charles. Over 1 million black men on the. Were you there? Okay, you know that experience. On the mall.
Yes. Yes.
The power of one man in a community of men and women, bringing 1 million men from all across the nation to one place.
Exactly.
So it's not that we can't do it. Mm-hmm. It's the follow-up that we have a problem with. Mm-hmm. See, we can do the big stuff, but we don't want to do the steady stuff. And that's where we have to rebuild. Because it took us too long to get here, and it's going to take us long to get out.
Well, I'll tell you this. I more than appreciate you, taking this time to spend with us. Also, I'm going to connect with you outside of this, because I'm planning on doing a special show. That's going to be a special. It's going to be a 2-hour special, and we're going to call it the State of Black America. And so with that roundtable, I'm going to have 4 to 5 members to be around this roundtable. And we're going to discuss these very issues of our communities. But not only are we going to be discussing them, we'll also be talking about how is it that we can solve these.
Yes.
And so, just wanted to let you know that, I'll be in touch with you outside of here to see, if that's something that we may be able to interest you in. But we're going to do this either the first week or the second week of March. It's going to be one of those Wednesdays. And so I definitely will be in touch with you. And I appreciate your time. And ladies and gentlemen, you just had a good feel and a good understanding here of Pastor Miller. And Pastor Miller has put that word out that I'm sure everybody felt what he was talking about. So I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. We'll see you guys tomorrow, and please have a great evening.